Hi guys, it's Jess from Honest Fiction, and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I am sharing my ultimate guide to 2026 fantasy romance releases. Alright guys, so in today's video, we are chatting about all of the upcoming 2026 fantasy romance releases. Now, I do this video every December, however, this is the first year I have almost 40 books to share with you guys. Now, for every book, I will give you a spoiler-free plot synopsis, and then I'm going to organize this by release date. So if you're looking for when a certain book releases, you can check the timestamps down below. But we have so many books to get through, so if you're unfamiliar with my channel, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. You can also hit that notification bell to be notified whenever I post new bookish content. You can also check out my Instagram, Goodreads, and Patreon, all linked down below. With all that out of the way, let's talk about these upcoming fantasy romance releases. Alright guys, so starting off with books releasing in January. First up, we have Dragon Cursed by Elise Kova. This is a young adult romantasy releasing on January 6th. Now, in this, we are set in a world where dragons have emerged. And when they emerged, so did this plague that transforms humans into dragons. Now, these dragons are incredibly destructive, so destructive that there's actually only one human settlement left, and our main character resides there. Well, she believes that she is starting to succumb to this illness that makes you transform into a dragon, and she is trying to hide it. Unfortunately, she has a friend/rival who is always tailing her, and he begins to suspect something might be amiss. So I think it's them trying to find a way to break this curse or this illness so our main character does not transform into a dragon. So I am very interested in this book. I will say I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Elise Kova. I have enjoyed some of her books in the past, but I've realized recently I have a lot of trouble really feeling connected to her characters. So I'm not exactly sure if I will pick this up, but if you do, let me know, what did you think? And also releasing on January 6th, we have The Swan's Daughter. Now, this is a young adult fantasy romance following Prince Arias. Now, he is cursed. On the day that he marries, his wife will kill him and take his throne, unless he finds true love. Now, he is very worried because there is about to be a tournament where all of these women are going to compete for his hand, and he is afraid one of them, or some of them, are going to try to murder him. So he enlists the help of this truth-singing swan, who I'm assuming can transform into a human, or else this is going to be a very interesting book. But a truth-singing swan, and she is going to pretend to be one of the contestants and try to figure out who is in it for love and who is in it to try to actually gain power. And I'm assuming they are going to develop a bit of a romance, but the cover of this book is breathtaking, and I've read other books by this author and have loved them. Gilded Wolves, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I might have butchered that title, but you guys know what I mean. Both such good reads, so I am very much looking forward to this book releasing. And releasing on January 13th, we have A Vow in Vengeance. This is a dark academia romantasy that features tarot card magic, which I absolutely love. So in this, we are following this girl who wants to get revenge on the immortals because her family has gone missing. So she breaks into the immortal realm, and when she gets there, she ends up being admitted into the Forge, which is an academy for druids who possess tarot card magic. Now, she realizes that she herself possesses apparently a very hard-to-come-by magic, and because of this, she is going to be trained, but she is going to be trained by this evil prince that wants her dead for some reason. So I believe it's going to be enemies to lovers. It does say one bed as one of, like, the tropes. I love one bed. I love tarot card magic. I love dark academia. So everything about this book sounds excellent. And releasing on January 27th, we have The Wolf and the Crown of Blood. This book sounds excellent. So it is a dark kind of gothic romantasy that is slightly inspired by Beauty and the Beast. So in this, we are following this girl or princess, Bryony, who lives in a world where the monarchs have to sacrifice themselves to be reborn in order to appease the gods. So Bryony has known this is her fate since she was born, and she's accepted it. However, a rebellion ends up breaking out before her sacrifice. So she is sent away, and the God King decides to send his greatest assassin, the wolf, after her. And apparently once the wolf is able to catch up with Bryony, they have an instant connection and he's unable to do the deed, and it's their romance. I cannot wait for this book to release. So that is part of the reason why I love doing this video. I find out about all of these awesome books coming out. So this will definitely be a book I read in January. And also releasing on January 27th, we have Silver and Blood, which is an adult romantasy following this girl named Rayla, who is an untrained mage who ends up going into the woods in order to kill a deadly beast. Unfortunately, she has almost killed herself, but at the last minute she is saved by this scarred, mysterious stranger she later finds out is Garrick, an Ethri? I'm not exactly sure what that is. I'm assuming it's some sort of magical being. But anyway, he has somehow been locked out or is away from his realm, so he's losing power. So our main character decides she is going to try to help him save his power and also train under him, and it's their romance. So I immediately added this book as soon as I saw the cover. I thought it was absolutely gorgeous. And when I was reading reviews, I did notice it seems like the biggest gripe with this book is both characters seem to be somewhat unlikable, and I love like an asshole main character, so I will 100% be picking this up when it releases. And last up for January, releasing on January 28th, Bound by the Sky. Now this is pitched as Treasure Planet meets Final Fantasy. Hell yes, I am so ready for this book. So in this, we are following Amaya, and she has always lived on the ground until a violent incident causes her to be abducted by the villainous Sky Lord, and he ends up taking her to his floating city above the clouds. Now we are also following a kind of pilot of another aircraft, and he is trying to start, I believe, a rebellion to take down his former mentor, the Sky Lord. But while doing so, somehow Amaya ends up on his airship. So at first he's going to throw her off, but then he realizes she could hold the key to bringing down the Sky Lord, and I believe they will also have a romance. I cannot wait for this book to release. I don't think I've ever read a book that really takes place like in the sky. I've definitely seen a bunch of like animes and TV shows, but I'm very intrigued. So another book I will 100% be reading. Alright guys, so moving into February, first up on February 3rd, A Stage Set for Villains is releasing. This is a young adult dark romantasy that has been compared to Caraval and One Dark Window, two amazing young adult series. So in this, the players of the playhouse are seen as gods, merciless evil gods, and no one knows this better than our main character, Riven. Riven is 18 years old and has been cursed by one of the players and is dying. So when she hears that the Playhouse is having a very special tournament and one of the players is going to give up their immortality, Riven is immediately excited and enters. Now when she gets in, she realizes this is much more than she bargained for, and then she ends up running in to Jude, who is the head playmaker. So I don't know if it's going to be their romance, but it kind of seems like that's where it's headed. But this also really gave me Phantasma vibes, although that was not like in the blurb or anything. And I love Phantasma, so I cannot wait to read this. And releasing on February 10th, we have Wicked Onyx. Now this is a dark academia romantasy, and in it we are following our main character, who is cursed, powerless, and desperate to clear her family's name. So she ends up going to this sorcerer's academy where she's hoping to locate a text that will prove that the Imperium, I'm assuming like the ruling class, has set her family up. But while doing so, she ends up running into two different individuals. Now, I don't know if this is a love triangle or why choose. Goodreads was kind of giving me like mixed signals. But either way, just know there are two guys that pop up and are going to play a major role in the plot in some way. But either way, I love Dark Academia, so this is probably a book I'm going to wait until closer to the fall to pick up, but I also am very excited to read it. And also releasing on February 10th, we have Heir of Illusion. Now, this book features a kick-ass assassin FMC, enemies to lovers, and a shadow daddy, so I'm already sold, but this plot sounds so good. So in this, we are following Iverson, my favorite 76ers player, by the way, just throwing that out there. Iverson, and she is an illusionist. However, her illusions are no power for this enchanted collar that has been placed around her neck, forcing her to be submissive to this ruthless king and be his mistress and his assassin. Well, she knows there is one artifact that will allow her to get this collar off, and she is trying to find it. So then enter Thorin. He is a Reaper, and he is searching for the exact same object. So together, they're going to form this very fragile alliance in order to find it, in the hopes of eventually killing this king. So I cannot wait. I'm hoping this is on like the darker side of dark fantasy romance. I have a feeling it's going to be. And it's getting very good reviews. I know they're just ARC reviews, so sometimes they're a little biased, but I think this has like a 4.7, so I cannot wait to read this. And that brings us to one of my most anticipated fantasy romance releases of 2026, Tortured Souls by Melissa K. Roehrich. Now, this is releasing on February 12th, I believe. There is no official synopsis yet. However, I do know this is the first book in a duet, and it takes place in the Chaosverse, so the same world as Lady of Darkness and Legacy. However, it's going to take place prior to the events of Lady of Darkness, and we are going to be following Razik, one of my favorite characters. I will read Melissa K. Roerich's grocery list. So literally, I was going to read this book anyway, but finding out we're following Razik has me so excited. So I'm 100% going to read this book the day it drops. And on February 13th, Music in the Shadows is releasing. This is an adult romantasy that is compared to The Pied Piper meets The Cruel Prince and Throne of Glass. So I have questions. I will say I just read the plot synopsis, and the main character reminded me a little bit of Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones. So I definitely want to check this book out. Now in this, we are following Morana, who is a warrior, and she ends up being assigned to be the bodyguard of this very egocentric prince that she cannot stand. However, as she protects him, she starts to grow a little bit closer to him, and she starts to have to exert some of her secret power. So we discover that she actually possesses this shadow power that if it was to be discovered, she would be killed. So she has used this in order to save this prince, and now she is concerned if he will turn her in or have they created this bond. So I'm not positive if it's their romance. From the plot, it didn't really give it away, but I'm assuming so. Either way, I definitely want to check this book out. And on February 17th, another one of my most anticipated romantasy books is releasing, Crown of War and Shadow by J.R. Ward. Now, I will admit, I did not finish the Black Dagger Brotherhood. That series is insanely long. However, I did meet J.R. Ward at a Polycon, and it was one of the best, if not the best, author encounters I've ever had. I've gotten better with like social anxiety and talking to authors and just strangers in general, but still, it's a little bit nerve-wracking. That woman will make you feel so comfortable. She was such a sweetheart. So I 100% want to read more books from her. Now, I believe this is the first book in a new kind of paranormal romantasy series. We're following this girl named Sorrel who is living in this village, and she's kind of shunned by all of the other villagers because she possesses a form of magic. However, when these demons or some sort of monsters start invading her little village, the head person in her village tells her, we are going to send you through the Badlands, and you are going to have to return this crown to this queen and then ask for help. So Sorrel immediately thinks she is going to die, so she asks a mercenary for help to get her to this kingdom, and he agrees, and the story goes from there. So once again, I've been wanting to read J.R. Ward for a while, and The Black Dagger Brotherhood is quite a commitment, so I am very excited to check this book out. And also releasing on February 17th, we have Half City by Kate Golden. This is an urban romantasy following Viv. Now, Viv appears to be your typical 21-year-old girl. However, at night, she actually is a demon hunter. Now, she is a bit of a recluse, and one night she's out, and she runs into a very charismatic demon named Reed. Now, Reed tells Viv about Harker Academy, which is an academy specifically for demon hunters to train and kind of get together. And our main character, Viv, has always kind of wanted to belong, so she agrees, and she is having a great time at this academy. But little does everyone realize that she is actually there for another reason. She is trying to solve a murder, her father's murder, and she believes that this academy could hold the secret, and the story goes from there. Now, I 100% meant to look up what other books this author has written. I know I've read this author before, but no books are coming to mind. So if you know any of her popular works, please leave them in the comments below. But this is and last up for February, releasing on February 19th, we have The Faithful Dark. Now, the plot of this is definitely interesting. We are set in a holy city where people can discern sin via touch. So our main character, Scylla, was born without a soul, so everyone in this community absolutely hates her and sees her as an abomination. That is until a string of murders begin taking place, and they realize Scylla is the answer to their problem. She can kill the murderer without it tarnishing her soul. So that is what they send her to do. That is all I know about this book, but it definitely has one of the more unique plots in this entire video. So another book I will 100% be reading. Alright, and moving into March, so on March 5th, the last Starborn Seer is releasing. Now this is an adult romantasy that kind of seems like an epic adventure. In this we are following Lilani, and she is one of the last people to possess Starborn magic, which is seen as volatile in this kingdom, and she is also a seer, so she can see into the future, but because of this, it is starting to kind of addle her mind. So her family is trying to get rid of her, and they broker an arranged marriage for her to marry her childhood rival. However, she ends up hearing word that there is a magical scepter that could put an end to a plague that has been kind of encroaching on her kingdom. So herself, along with someone that she ends up hiring, I believe it's like a townsperson, are going to travel and try to find this scepter, all under the watchful eyes of her intended. So I don't know if it's a love triangle or if it's a why choose or what's going to go down, but either way, another book that sounds amazing. And releasing on May 10th is Bitterbloom. Now, this honestly reminds me a lot of Belladonna. So in this, we are following Adelaide, and she lives in this very small town where everyone believes she is cursed. She has a chronic illness that causes her to see visions, and the town holds her responsible for everything bad that happens. Well, one day, our main character, Adelaide, is traveling by a river, and she sees this peculiar bell, and somehow touching this bell alerts her to the fact that she doesn't actually have a chronic illness, she's being possessed by ghosts. So the only way to stop all of these visions is to free the ghosts from the purgatory they are trapped in. So this sounds absolutely awesome. This is another book I probably will not read right when it drops. I'll probably wait till closer to October because it definitely has that creepy ghost paranormal feel. But another book I cannot wait to read. Okay, so this next book sounds amazing, but I am very concerned I'm going to do a very poor job of explaining the synopsis. I will do my best. So on March 10th, we have These Shattered Spires. And now this is a young adult kind of sci-fi fantasy that said it was perfect for fans of Gideon the Ninth. In this, we are following arcanists, and they are very powerful in one of 4 different types of magic. So blood, bone, botany, and there's a 4th one that I am forgetting. Anyway, the controller of this magic ends up passing away, and in order for a new ruler to be selected, the alchemists, along with their human familiars, have to fight to the death in a thing known as the Slaughter. Essentially, they have to reach the 5th floor, but I think they're all trying to kill each other while this is going on. Now, the human familiars are not allowed to talk at all. They are just seen as power sources for the Arcanists, so they're essentially all gonna die. So they decide they are gonna figure out a way out of this. One of them discovers that if she can team up with 4 other familiars from different groups, they can work together to somehow get a key that will allow them to escape the Slaughter. Oh my god, I did it. Okay, so that is the plot of this book, and it sounds awesome. So another book I definitely want to read as soon as it releases. And also releasing on March 10th, we have The Wings That Bind, which is the 3rd book in the Bloodwing Academy series by Briar Bolin. Now, I did not look up the plot synopsis for that book because I have not read the 2nd book in that series. But just know the 1st book I did really enjoy. It is very bully, so if you are sensitive to bully romances, maybe skip it. But we're just essentially following this fae, I believe, who wakes up in a different realm that is filled with vampires, and she is forced to attend an academy where she is relentlessly bullied by everybody and she has to survive. So overall, very enjoyable, and I will 100% be reading the sequel within the next couple months, so I am ready for this 3rd book to release. And another sequel that is releasing in March is Heir of Twisted Lies. Now, this is releasing March 26th, and it is the sequel to Broken Souls and Bones by L.J. Andrews. Now, once again, this is a sequel, so I really can't get into the plot, but the 1st book deals with this girl who is living in this village trying to kind of keep her head down until her friend is in kind of a predicament, and she's forced to reveal that she actually possesses a certain type of magic. And because of this, she is going to have to be the king's next meddler, which is a very dangerous position, and I really loved the 1st book, so I'm so excited to see what is going to happen in the 2nd. I have an idea where the romance is headed, and I want to be right. So another book I will 100% be reading when it releases. Alright guys, so moving into April, right off the bat, we have 2 sequels releasing on April 7th. So first up is Rights of the Starling by Devney Perry, which is the sequel to Shield of Sparrows. If you did not read Shield of Sparrows, it is a debut romantasy. We're following this princess whose younger sister was supposed to marry a prince from a neighboring kingdom in order to foster peace. However, when that prince shows up with his brooding bodyguard, the prince decides he wants to marry our main character instead, although she was not raised for this role. So she is going to have to travel with these 2 strangers to this new kingdom she knows nothing about, and it's her story. I did not love the 1st book, however, I am very interested in the 2nd. I feel like where we left off in the 1st book, I might end up enjoying the 2nd book a little bit more. Now, Bloodsinger by Juliet Cross is also releasing on April 7th. This is the sequel to Firebird. I know Firebird had a lot of kind of mixed reviews when it released. I'm not going to get into the controversy, but if you're unfamiliar with Firebird, it was following this girl who was a dancer who ends up meeting this soldier. They have a bit of a connection, and then years go by, and her entire family has been killed. She is on the run, and this soldier sees her across the battlefield, erupts into a dragon, and makes her his own in order to save her. It's their romance. So that book kind of left off on a bit of a cliffhanger / different POV. I have a feeling we're probably going to get a whole new set of characters in Bloodsinger, but I am not positive. But either way, I am curious. I didn't hate Firebird. However, I did go into it knowing all of the triggers, which I think was the biggest issue. So I will be picking up Bloodsinger once it releases. And also releasing on April 7th is The Wicked Sea. Now, all I know is this is following a mermaid who is magically bound to a warlock, and together they are going to have to travel to the ocean's darkest depths in order to claim the heart of the god of death or die trying. Honestly, I was very surprised because the cover of this book is giving like very cute, and then I read that plot synopsis and I was like, hell yeah. So I will probably wait until the spring or summer to pick this book up, but either way, it sounds awesome. And on April 21st, 6 Bullets and a Crown is releasing. Now, this does not have a full synopsis, but it does say that in a world where magic means death, a woman who is hiding her powers ends up asking a brooding gunslinger to help her get across these wastelands, and it's going to be their romance. I love any sort of like gunslinger type Western romantasy, so definitely a book I want to check out. And next up is a paranormal vampire romantasy, The Gravewood. Now this has 2 different release dates. One is in early March and the other one is mid-April. I'm gonna go with the later date just to be safe, but it could release at either time. Now in this, we are following this girl who lives in an isolated town in front of the Gravewood. Now, apparently in this community, there are vampires, and everyone knows not to enter these woods or else you will die. So our main character might be deaf, or at least partially deaf, and her hearing aid batteries are dying. So she ends up going to a vampire and says, hey, I'll make you a deal. If you can find me batteries to replace in my hearing aid, then I will give you my blood. No strings attached, no connections, just a deal's a deal. So they agree, and everything is working out pretty well until our main character's best friend ends up going missing in these woods. Now, our main character's brother, named Asher, had recently returned from war, and he is desperate to find the best friend, so he also strikes up a deal with this vampire, and the vampire tells him that Asher, the brother, needs to kill the vampire's rival, and also his sister needs to be turned into a vampire. And it goes from there. So there's a lot going on in that plot synopsis, but either way, I love a vampire romance, and this sounds really entertaining, so I cannot wait to pick it up. And on April 28th, 2 more highly anticipated sequels are releasing. So first up we have The Sea Spinner, which is the sequel to The Wind Weaver by Julie Johnson. So if you didn't read The Wind Weaver, it really deals with elemental magic. We're following this woman who lives in a world where having magic is a death sentence. Before she can be killed, she is saved by this guy who travels her up north, and while doing so, tells her that he believes she could be one of 4 remnants, these beings that are supposed to help kind of save magic and like restore magic to this world. So I loved the first book. I have a feeling there's a love triangle kind of being set up, and I'm so here for it. So I cannot wait to pick up The Sea Spinner. And then the other one is The Ballad of Falling Dragons. Now this is the sequel to When the Moon Hatched. This book was supposed to release, I believe, this summer, and it was delayed. So we will see what happens. I need to do a reread of When the Moon Hatched, because while I did very much enjoy that book, I forget so much of it, and I also remember it took me a very long time to get through that book. The writing style, very verbose, very kind of poetic in the beginning, so it was a bit of a struggle for me, but I did end up enjoying the overall story. So very curious to see where the kind of plot is headed. Alright, so moving into May, I will say most of the books from here on out don't have like full plot synopsis, so the second part of this video should go significantly quicker than the first part. But there are a bunch of books dropping on May 5th. So first up we have Verity Gold. Now there is not a plot synopsis for this. All it says is it is traitors meets a court of silver flames, enemies to lovers, apparently very epic, and features blood magic. So I do love all of those things, and the cover of this book is absolutely stunning. However, I'm gonna hold off and pass judgment once we get a like full plot synopsis, just because that's not really a lot to go on. And also releasing on May 5th, we have Stormbreaker by Nisha J. Tooley. Now this is a young adult dystopian fantasy romance, and I almost didn't include it because once again, we do not have much of a plot synopsis. However, this says it is like Divergent meets The Cruel Prince. Now, I did kind of hate on The Cruel Prince a little bit, but I did love Jude and Cardin's dynamic. So if it has that type of romance, but set in like the Divergent world, I'm going to love this book. So another book I cannot wait to read. And unfortunately, 2 of my most anticipated Romantasy sequels are also releasing on May 5th. And the fact that I have to wait until May for both of these books is a travesty. I am so sad. So first up, we have Broken Dove, which is the sequel to Silver Elite. Honestly, I'm just curious about this book. I really enjoyed Silver Elite. I have no idea how I'm going to feel about the sequel. First, I really have to do a reread of Silver Elite if you have not read it. It is a romantasy / dystopian. We're following this girl named Ren, who lives in a world where having psychic abilities is a death sentence, and her magic is exposed, and she is forced to go to this academy, or like training academy, and she decides she is going to take down this evil regime from the inside. So I really loved it. I'm very curious on what is going to happen in book 2. And then we have Furybound, which is the sequel to Direbound. This is killing me that I have to wait until May. So if you did not read Direbound, it is essentially Fourth Wing, but add way more violence, some licking of tattoos, which was interesting. And also, instead of dragons, we have direwolves. I absolutely loved this book, and it is killing me that I have to wait until May to find out what is going to happen next. And releasing on May 12th is Deathbringer. This is another kind of like creepy, gothic, dark academia romantasy. So in this, we are following Viola, and Viola has the ability to speak to the dead. However, her magic ended up killing her sister, Olivia, and if Viola doesn't figure out why this happened, she could be next. So she ends up going to this magical institute to try to find out everything about her magic, and when she gets there, she meets a poison mage who for some reason hates her, and the story really gets going from there. So this is another book. It didn't seem to have like a full plot synopsis, but what I saw sounded excellent, and another book I will probably pick up in the fall. And there are 2 different books releasing on May 14th. So first up is Dark Witch, which is the first book in the Hearthstone Academy series. Now, this is compared to Harry Potter. Well, Harry Potter set in the Hunger Games world, so I am very intrigued. And it features witches, warlocks, and has an enemies to lovers feel. So, sounds perfect for spooky season. And then we have Tides of Memory by Laura A. Blake, which is the sequel to The Forgotten Dawn, which was another one of my top reads of the year. So if you did not read The Forgotten Dawn, we are following this girl named Brita, who is desperate to save her dying father, so she sneaks into these deadly Fae trials in order to try to save him, and it has everything you absolutely love in fantasy romance: trials, a shadow daddy, one bed. It's so good. So I am dying for the sequel. And moving into June, I only have 1 book, but it is the highly anticipated sequel to Metal Slinger. So Light Wielder by Rachel Snyder is releasing. If you read Metal Slinger, you know the ending of that book was absolutely insane. So I feel like we are all dying for the sequel and to see what is going to happen. Now, I believe this was delayed because it was picked up by a traditional publisher, but either way, I am dying for this book. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Metal Slinger, I do a terrible job of explaining the plot of it because I am terrified of giving away any sort of spoiler. Just know we are following this girl who has been raised to be a guard, and she has been longing, or everyone in this community really, looks forward to the day they can attend this annual market that is hosted by the people that exiled their people. But anyway, our main character goes to this market, and pretty soon after setting foot on the soil, breaks a peace agreement and everything goes to hell. And we're following her as she's trying to kind of solve this problem. But overall, I loved Metal Slinger, and I cannot wait for the sequel. And I only have 1 book for July, so In the Wake of the Ruined, which is the sequel to In the Veins of Drowning, will be releasing. Now, I very much enjoyed In the Veins of Drowning, another one of my top reads of the year. It is a beautifully written book, but also very easy to understand, about a siren who is forced to live in a kingdom that hunts her kind until an arranged marriage happens. Another kind of event takes place, and she is forced to flee with a prince, and they get chased by zombie sirens, and it's awesome. So I cannot wait for the sequel to release. Unfortunately, I have a very long time to wait because it's not releasing until July. And on August 4th, The Lion and the Deathless Dark will be releasing. Now, technically, this is the 5th book in the Crown of Nyaxia series by Carissa Broadbent, starting with Serpent and the Wings of Night. However, I'm pretty sure they're broken up by duet, so I think this is the start of a new duet within that series. So I believe we're going to be following a separate couple from the previous 2 duets, if that makes any sense. Now, I still have not caught up on the last 2 books in that series, which I definitely need to do. If you've read them, what did you think? I saw a lot of mixed reviews when book 3 dropped, but then I kind of haven't really kept up since then. But I love Carissa Broadbent's writing, so I will definitely read this eventually. And we have made it to the end. So last up, releasing in October, which is insane to think about October 2026. That seems so far away. We have The Wretched Dark by Adeline Grace. Now, this is the start of a new series, I believe involving angels and demons. We're following this girl who is one of the last of her kind, I believe, of her bloodline. And she, after she gets her first kill and kills a demon or a monster, she'll be able to have a soul bond with Uriel, who is a god and responsible for the safety of her kingdom. But when her family members begin turning into these deadly monsters, she becomes so desperate that she seeks a second bond with a demon. So now she's bonded to both of these creatures, and they're all gonna have to work together, despite them being enemies normally, to save this kingdom. So it sounds awesome. I love Adeline Grace's writing, so I know it's going to be amazing. I'm just very sad I have to wait until October of 2026 to pick this book up. Alright guys, that is it for my upcoming 2026 fantasy romance releases. This video took an incredible amount of time to put together, so thank you so much all of you who have stayed up until this point. I would also like to point out there are a lot of books that have yet to be announced, so I also do anticipated kind of quarterly release videos for upcoming fantasy romances that will be releasing within the next few months. So I will probably post that in early January for January, February, and March. So keep an eye out for that. I'd also like to say a very, very special thank you to my Paladin Protectors, my highest Patreon tier. We have Amanda, Leslie, Christy, Kat, Lada, Nerdy, and Amanda G. Thank you guys so much for supporting my channel. And I said this already, I post new videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe. I will see you all next week. Bye.